This is the Biz News Podcast, one-on-one conversations with experts in business and personal development.
Businesses and nonprofits are faced daily with how to best meet goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. DEI expert Colette Phillips says cultural IQ can bridge cultural gaps among the black, brown, and white experiences that whites often don't even realize. And she says improving one's cultural IQ just takes some homework and an open mind. Colette Phillips explains more in this episode of Bizgnus Interviews. Colette, you're a long time and very strong advocate for inclusion in the workplace. What if one's business is based in or derives a lot of its income from a state like Florida or Texas, where political leaders are ardent in opposing required diversity, equity, and inclusion training in the workplace? What do you say then?
Well, I would say that these are people who think of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a zero-sum game. And diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't mean that you go out on the highways and byways and just pick anybody and bring them in because they happen to be Latino or Black or a woman or, any of the people of culturally diverse backgrounds. You're still going to go for the best talent. But if you are a company and you want to do business in the state of Texas or the state of Florida, there aren't all white people living in those states. You have markets that are Black, that are Latino, that are Asian, that are immigrants, and you are leaving significant dollars on the table. This is about not only doing the right thing, it's doing the economically smart thing. It's a business imperative. And people need to stop looking at this diversity, equity, and inclusion through the narrow lenses of some kind of anti-woke, politically correct kind of thing. It's not. The reality is our world and our country are emerging and becoming more culturally diverse, which, Doug, is what our founding fathers envisioned. That's why they gave us that powerful Latin motto of e pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. They, even back then, a Black woman like me was not considered fully human according to the Constitution and at the time, because it's now amended. They knew that people were going to come to America from around the world with different languages, different ethnicities, different culture. And they understood that we in America should be the model for the world of how people of different backgrounds, religious beliefs, and cultural, linguistically diverse really live and coexist in a peaceful, respectful manner. That is what makes America great.
Now, we need to have you put on your hiring hat. You're going to be hiring a recent college graduate. You have two finalists for the job. One has gone to they've both gone to state universities. One to a state university, which has DEI training and is active in that, and the other where the state has forbidden it. Which would have the edge, do you think?
Well, I think I wouldn't assume that because one person did not have exposure, that person has the edge. You certainly are going to use the same merit. If what I would say to you is, if my company had 95% of its employees all of the same background, and I did not have as diverse a employee base as I would like to see, I would certainly, as long as that candidate is qualified, if the two candidates have exactly the same credentials and they both interview very well, I would personally make the decision that I would go with the person that is more diverse. It could be gender diverse, it could be racially diverse. I would go with that person because I think what I'm trying to do is build an inclusive workplace that is reflective of my marketplace. And the research by McKinsey, research by Harvard, research by the Boston Consulting Group, by Deloitte, have shown that when you have a diverse workforce, it is much more innovative, inventive, and you get things that you may not have even thought about when you have an inclusive workforce because you have employees who can advise you. In my book, The Includers, there is a story that could be urban legend, but remember Frank Perdue? He had that fabulous slogan, it takes a tough man to make a tender chicken. Well, when he was promoting that among Latino consumers and in Mexico, because he did not have people on his marketing team who actually spoke Spanish and understood the nuances of words, you know, he basically said it takes an hombre fuerte to make a chicken affectionate. It takes a strong man to make a chicken affectionate. So that was a gaffe and a faux pas that could have been avoided had he had a team that reflected the marketplace. So it is just good business. It's not political correctness. If that is so, why do political parties? That's what I would ask the governors of Texas and Florida. Do you not market your campaign in Spanish when you want to reach Spanish people, when you want to reach the Haitian voters, when you want to reach the Brazilian voters in your state? Do you talk to them in English? Do you send them out English booklets about why they should vote for you, or do you put it in Spanish? You put it in Spanish. Why? Because you want to speak to them in the language that they are most comfortable in. And we have to understand, Doug, when people come to America, they don't check their cultural habits and behavior at the airport. They bring them with them. They bring the best of their cultural norms and behavioral patterns, the foods they like to go. Think about 100 years from now, 100 years ago, rather, when Europeans were flooding into America, the Italians, the Irish, the Germans. What did they do? They clustered into the communities where everybody in that community spoke the language. That's why you have German towns, you have Italian communities, you have Chinatown, you have the Irish in Boston. We are a very tribalistic city. You have parts of the city that have been basically where the Irish live, where the Black people live, where the Chinese people live, where the Italians live in the North End. The restaurants there are all Italian restaurants. Why? Because people want to continue to feel that they have not necessarily assimilated, but acculturated. They keep their culture, but they also embrace the best of the new culture that they have come into. Well, 100 years later, we have immigrants coming from different parts of the world, coming from Africa, coming from Latin America, coming from the Caribbean, and they bring their culture with them. And they want to feel that they acculturate in America. And it's We are the best experiment, as I said, for people coexisting together, living together, and being unified. We fighting each other, hate and intolerance and all of that. We That is not what America should be about or is about. I think of diversity not like musical chairs. When the music stops and you're not in front of a chair, boom, you're out. I think of diversity as a Thanksgiving table. And what do you do at the Thanksgiving table? You add more chairs, you cook more food, you have everybody has a seat, everybody gets a plate, everybody has a voice at that table. And that's my view. And that includes, I'm not one of these people who think white guys should not be at the diversity table. You cannot advance and advocate for inclusion and then you exclude groups of people. Because if you do that, you are basically perpetuating a new form of biases, which basically you're undermining the very remedy that DE&I was created to remedy, which is to basically stop unconscious biases and prejudices towards certain groups of people by their religion, their ethnicity. You're now creating a new form of biases against white guys, against other people, Jewish people. So you have to talk about diversity through the lens of inclusion. And for me, the path to inclusion is radical anti exclusion. I will never, ever advance a system that is exclusive of anybody. I think white men have something to say. They basically sit in the seats of power and influence, and they have the best, I would say, view of how they can help to change things. And I'm not advocating for white men to come in like white knights on horses to save women and people of color. I am advocating for them to be allies who are willing to lean in, to listen, to learn, and to lead from behind. Let the people who are closest to the pain tell you how best. Doug, here's how you can be helpful to me. You sit on a board of directors, and I think I could bring a lot to that board. I would love if you would advocate for me on that board. I would love you to be my sponsor. I would love you to be a mentor of mine. I am proud to say that I have had mentors that are white men, mentors that are Black women, mentors that are Latinos. I've had a wide range of culturally diverse mentors. And therefore, I believe that white men are the secret sauce to this diversity, equity, and inclusion impasse that we are having now in this country because they sit, and I know that white guys have been for years at the forefront. If you think about the abolitionist movement had people like William Lloyd Garrison, who was a mentor to Frederick Douglass. He was a white man. The guy who advocated for slavery abolishment in the British colony was a white guy by the name of William Wilberforce. The man who made the most sweeping civil rights changes in our laws was once a white supremacist who basically ran on a white supremacist platform. Lyndon Baines Johnson, who had a change of mind and a change of heart and will forever be remembered as the person who brought us the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, which we are celebrating this year as the 60th year. So for me, and even if we move into today, the first African American woman who became the CEO of a Fortune 500, Ursula Burns at Xerox, was mentored by a white guy by the name of Wayland Hicks. So we have to remember that, there is no, I would say, dearth of white men who have done the right thing, who are doing the right thing. And so therefore, why should we exclude them? I mean, I don't think we should basically demonize. Yes, we should speak out when we hear and see white men behavior. And I'm not an apologist for white guys' bad behavior. When they behave badly, they ought to be called out on it, as some of the politicians we know and some of the other people who are out there, media people who are stoking the fires of hate and racial animos. I think we should celebrate, appreciate, and amplify the guys who are doing the right thing. Because you know what, Doug? They become the role models for the next generation of white men, rather than listening to all this white nationalist, oh, they're going to replace you kind of BS. We need them to say, wait a minute, I know Doug, he's a good guy. And look at what he's doing. And he's not losing anything from it, by working, by helping, by engaging, by investing. We build a better, stronger America. That's what we want, to be a competitive country in the world with every talent that we can muster, working to create more. When you have everybody working, guess what? You have a stronger consumer index. You have a better tax base because everybody is contributing. And it's a winning strategy. It's not a strategy of a we lose, you win. It's a strategy of we all win.
Colette, before we run out of time, could you give our listeners and viewers a website where they can get more information?
Absolutely. Either go to Google theincluders.com or go to the http://www.Colette, Colette, Phillips, PHILLIPS.com. And you will find all the information about this book and about my advocacy for true inclusion.
You've been listening to the Bizgnus Podcast. We welcome your input. Send your email to editor@bizgnus.com. That's BIZGNUS.com. Thanks for listening.